Hey everybody, John Greenwald here with theblackvault.com. Now I'm coming at you today with a story, kind of a fun one in my book, because this stems from a eBay auction that created quite a stir. Now let me pull up some visuals for you guys. This was an article I wrote very recently, and let me bring it up here. This was a document from 1965 entitled Extra-Terrestrial Warfare and was authored by Robert Suggs, again, June of 1965. Now, this was, again, something on eBay. Now, let me pull up an auction. This is the live auction here. And you can actually see that this was a effort by this person to charge you $1 million to buy this document. It's an original, he said, rare secret U.S. document, alien warfare, Army Space Force, UFO SETI 1965, NASA UFO. Now, somebody sent this to me. I thought, okay, this is kind of silly. And so I started going through the images. It looked actually legitimate. And a lot of times when you see these government documents, there's a lot of tall tale signs that they are legit, because these markings at the top here, the secret and unclassified stamp, actually look legitimate. A lot of these random stamps everywhere here also very much show that it was probably legit. Some of these numbers down here, the different types of copies, you can see 38 of 50. I just thought, hey, this is probably something real. Now, I wasn't thinking it was as advertised, because this guy essentially made it seem like it was all about alien warfare. But I never, you never know what you're going to find. He put very little up. He didn't scan the whole thing. He just put here's the table of contents, the abstract summary, introduction, discussion, extraterrestrial combat environment, the functional areas of extraterrestrial warfare, outline of a proposed study program. So based on that, I went after the document, started going to a couple different agencies, namely the Defense Technical Information Center, or DTIC. It is a very underrated and underlooked government agency that has a ton of material. Now, something, though, that you'll find in there are generally documents on everything, but a lot of times you'll find what are called master theses or a master thesis on a particular topic. And again, those are wide-ranging. So they don't necessarily reflect the views or the stance by the United States government or the military or anything like that, but rather they are study papers by those in a military war college or so on and so forth. So I knew that that would probably be the best bet for me to go first. It ended up going through a couple different agencies. Let me go ahead and pull up the actual response for you guys. So this particular document was found in full here. Before I get into it, this essentially ended up, after getting bounced around a little bit, it ended up coming to me from the Army. That is a public address, so before you get too worried that I'm doxing myself here, I don't mind. And in fact, they even have a typo there. It's not 7305, it's 27305. But again, public address, it's not a big deal. It's out there. So the Army found it, specifically the U.S. Army Garrison Carlisle Barracks. They had a copy of it, and so they sent it to me, saved myself $1 million to see this whole thing. And it was exactly as expected, not quite as advertised on eBay. Not necessarily something about alien warfare where we're fighting a alien race that's invading the United States of America, but rather an extraterrestrial. And the key here is extra-terrestrial. So I think grammatically, without that dash, extraterrestrial would essentially mean that alien threat, somebody from some far off distant planet. Extraterrestrial with the dash more or less meant off the planet, however, somewhat close by in our vicinity. So let's say the Soviets were progressing with their warfare and their military capabilities, and we find ourselves combating the Soviets, again, 1960s era, combating the Soviets on the surface of the moon. And so they were talking in that respect to extraterrestrial. The abstract here reads, the United States may be called upon to wage extraterrestrial warfare within the next 2 to 3 decades. This paper explores the implications of this requirement for the U.S. Army and proposes a program of studies that will enable the Army to meet this requirement. So essentially, I think a lot of people read into that we were going to be engaged in extraterrestrial warfare. But essentially, it goes into, just like I was talking about, the Soviet Union. Here's a summary of it. This paper presents briefly some of the problems attendant upon development of an extraterrestrial warfare capability for the U.S. Army. The unusual space environment, the development of such a capability poses a large number of complex problems. There is a need for further definition of Army roles and missions in extraterrestrial warfare, as well as the definition of systems in as much detail as possible so that requirements may be developed. A general study program leading to the achievement of these goals is outlined. And it goes from there. I'm not going to read you the whole document, but I invite you to download it. I'm going to go ahead and put it into the description of this video below on YouTube, or if you just go to theblackvault.com, it is still one of the top stories right now being visited on that website. So you'll see it under trending, you'll see it in the menu, and so on. So this is what it is. Document is complete, goes all the way down. It was considered secret at one time, as you can see on the cover page, then was downgraded to confidential, and now it is unclassified. So you'll be able to read all of that to your heart's content. Very cool little story. And to kind of close it here, the guy who ran the eBay auction, he tracked me down on eBay because I have a store on there and sell unrelated to the Black Vault items on there. And he tracked me down and sent me a direct, we'll call it an unsolicited offer, because I never reached out to the guy. And he shaved off $50,000 for me to own it for a cool $950,000. I did turn down that offer. I did send a counter offer of $5. Figured that would be more than generous since I had already seen the document. He turned that down. So the saga continues. Who knows what'll ever happen, or if somebody even buys it. I hope they don't, because it's, false advertising. But anyway, enjoy. It's one of those gems that the FOIA produces that really saved us all $1 million to see this document. And although it's cool and great history, not quite as advertised. Anyway, this is John Greenwald Jr. signing off. Make sure you give that thumbs up button a push, and it is a big help to me. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.